What would it be like to be a scientific explorer? You know, somebody who's out in nature, who is gathering data, who's gathering information in extreme conditions, places like Antarctica, the Arctic, or elsewhere. Well, I do have some answers for you via this great guest today. Her name is Dr. Ulyana Horodyskyj Peña, and she does all of what I just explained and a lot more. And in this video, this highlights compilation of the full-length audio conversation that I had with her, we get into some of these things, you know, like for example, these notions of curiosity and exploration. You know, what drives her as a professional? Further, we chat about some of, her inspirations for getting into this, what sort of motivated her and introduced this world to her, and also even how she's paying it forward now to other young women within this environmental space. Not only that, she has some great stories that she shares about her experiences in nature. So all up, I think this conversation is going to be really exciting and really inspiring for a lot of people. So I encourage everyone to, of course, watch this video, but also go check out the full-length conversation. You can do so wherever you access your podcast. Just do that search for Life as a ... All right, well, let's get into it. All right, well, I'd like to launch into all of this with a story. And this is Dr. Horodyskyj Peña explaining this story that was really quite formative in her professional development while she was a university student. So take a look.
So I worked on the back deck of an icebreaker. So it's a working ship. And the scientists had different kinds of projects that they were doing. And I served like 12-hour working shifts of whatever was needed. So there's a lot of discoveries to be had. Like, hey, I am the one seeing this seafloor for the first time through our surveys. I'm looking at this core. Look at that shell. How old is that? And what's that? That's a volcanic eruption. So there's a lot of this is as a 21-year-old, so there's a lot of this kind of excitement. And then there's videos on YouTube that show this, but a huge calving event. Calving is giving birth to an iceberg. So this glacier is coming down and calved off. It must have been like 30 meters. A 30-meter wall that just came down and bobbed back up. And, we're all excited, like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. But then looking back, we could have died. It's like the whole ship just went like this. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So it's not just the ice coming, right? It's the wave.
It's the wave, right?
And the other wave. And huge pieces of ice washed up on the back deck, dented steel containers that were on the back deck. And it's just, wow, that was the power of Mother Nature right there.
Yeah.
I want to do this the rest of my life. I want to understand this. I want to travel to these places. And that really evoked this sense of awe, at the power, sadness, because wow, look what just happened.
What an unreal experience, huh? Well, I do want to return to the present now, and here's Dr. Horodyskyj Peña explaining what she does and also some of her views on her work. And one thing you're going to probably pick up on throughout the conversation is her enthusiasm and passion. And hey, I mean, if you can find that, if you have that within the work that you're doing, you're ahead of the game. So anyway, check this one out too.
So I'm primarily work out in the field, out in the real world, not the laboratory setting. There's a lot of unknowns. That's the exciting part. There's a lot of things still to be found out. You think that oftentimes, we figured out all these things, but not really. One of the things during my research is I would sit on the edge of a glacier. It's called a moraine. So it's a pile of rocks that the glacier shoved apart. And I would just watch and listen to the landscape in the beginning. We have this world of gadgets, distractions. It's nice sometimes to be able to just sit in nature, have it reveal its secrets to us. So coming in as a scientist, you have a list of questions, hypotheses. You do, the systematic kind of process and the diagnostics that you talked about there with exploration. But sometimes nature reveals the question to you instead, something you may not have thought of. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of exploration and discovery in science. And also having this firsthand kind of experiential learning is a big part of it as well, especially when you're working on changing landscapes like glaciers.
All right. Well, this next clip, I think, is a really important one. Oftentimes when we're considering life, when we're considering professions, it comes down to this idea of why. Why are we doing what we're doing? What is our purpose? What is our mission? What is our passion, really? And here's a clip of Dr. Horodyskyj Peña explaining her why in essence, and, what drives her and what her mission is all about.
There's two ideas or two constructs that sort of like came to mind for you. And one was like exploration, which we've just sort of addressed. And the other is curiosity. And I'm guessing that those two constructs sort of like are intertwined, and they bring all of these seemingly disparate sort of experiences and interests together. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was always that restless kid, in school. So I did science fair projects. I was always curious, getting into things. And my nickname has become Ulyana because I'm always like wanting to know things. It's like if somebody asks me something I don't know, there I go. So I'm trying, eager to find out. But you have to investigate and vet things properly. In the internet world, there's a lot out there. So that's why that's why they call it research, right? Search and research and you kind of hit it. Yeah, it's a lot of varied experiences, but that binding theme is science education. The way I like to put it is my goal is really to bring science to the masses. That's what I do through my photography, through my writing, research, and to bring the masses to science through expeditionary, like kind of work and bringing them along on treks and climbs.
Now, another thing that I kind of wanted to explore are the practical elements of doing what she does. Again, she noted she's not usually in the lab when she's doing a lot of her work. She's in the field. And not only in the field, she's in extreme conditions, at high altitude or, places where, you really have to be on your game. You have to be well organized. You have to have a plan in place. Otherwise, things could get nasty real quick. So here's Dr. Horodyskyj Peña explaining those elements of her work.
Yeah, there's always a plan A, B, and C, right? The A is kind of the desire. B is, if you can't do some of those things, and plan C is for the bad weather days. So you kind of try to have a general sense of what options exist. So really kind of tracking weather forecasts and communicating with team members who might have information as well. But a lot of the things we do to prep also is cheat sheets. You just write down, these are the tasks to do, get them laminated, because when you're working at altitude, it's really easy to then forget, wait, what was the order of what I'm supposed to do? And it's all right there. Like, okay, take a GPS point. All right, take a sample. How's the sampling done? So that kind of organization.
The structuring of it all.
Definitely important. A lot of that gets done beforehand for expeditions. And then you just hope for the best.
I don't know about you, but whenever I encounter somebody within the environmental space, I'm always kind of blown away at, one, their level of enthusiasm and passion for what they do. And the reason for this is that I think there's like a ton of doom and gloom out there. I mean, let's face it. In the trajectory that we're on right now and our track record of, what we've done to this planet, not so good, right? So I'm always kind of curious about how people that are involved within this space, keep so enthusiastic, or stay so optimistic about things. And here's a perfect example of that sort of attitude on display with Dr. Horodyskyj Peña explaining her views on this.
But I always try to take kind of that hopeful slant. Kathmandu has a lot of air pollution problems and water pollution. That's the city I lived in, and I was having a lot of issues with my lungs. But that's a solvable case. The soot that comes into the air and the air pollution, like you can clear that out in a few weeks if you just regulate some of this stuff. So always trying to be like, here's the problem, but what's the solution? If you keep throwing problems at people, you're right, they get numb. They're not going to do anything about it. But if they see there's a glimmer of like, oh, I didn't know that, but I can do something about it on an individual level, plus community, just local communities, pockets of people doing this. That's how you mobilize a movement.
Now, I think it's clear to see that the work that Dr. Horodyskyj Peña does is somewhat out of the ordinary, right? It's not your typical 9-to-5 job. And as such, it attracts attention, certainly. And not only that, it inspires others. And I want to have this conversation about that impact, how she sees herself becoming a bit of a role model for others. So here's a clip of her explaining just that.
But you'd raise the point of, you meeting somebody that you looked up to at one point, and, how big of an impact that person had on your life as far as inspiration goes. And now what you're doing, creating these opportunities perhaps for others, and maybe young women as well that might be looking up to you. Has that sort of full circle experience come around?
It actually is
it
starting
right now?
to it's in the process. I've been kind of looking back, like you said, kind of like looking back on career, but also like the students that I've been helping, that I've been mentoring, who are winning science fairs now, who are going to colleges and pursuing geology, for example. One young lady who is the youngest American woman to climb Everest is now climbing K2 and collaborating with me on science, who reached out. Like, this is amazing. And it's a chance to also, to really like hopefully mentor someone. And I had mentors. I had really good mentors, but none of them were female. And so I kind of always missing part of that perspective. And so Arlene provided some of that through, her writings and the books, but that's where I hope to fill in kind of a gap. Yeah.
Well, this might be a nice point to kind of draw things to a close, but I do encourage you to listen to the full-length conversation. I mean, there's so much more contained within it. For example, there's great stories. There's also some insights about a project that Dr. Horodyskyj Peña was involved with that involved NASA. Yeah, NASA, the space agency. You don't want to miss that. So please check it out. You can do so wherever you access your podcast. Just do that search for Life as a ... All right, well, while I do have your attention here, I do have a big favor to ask. I would really, really appreciate a like or subscribe. I know it's a bit crass and I always feel funny asking for it, but it's the only way that this platform, YouTube, knows to continually share this content, to put it in front of others. And I think there's power here. There's great guests we've been able to get onto Life as a, and it's, it can inspire someone. It can set someone up for their next 30, 40 years, find their careers, find their passion. So yeah, I think it's worth a share. I think it's worth a like or subscribe. So yes, and also too, of course, I'd encourage you to check out the next episode of Life as a. It'll be coming at you right next week, so just wait for that. All right, until then, see you later.